So it's time to talk about rendering. Rendering is the process of generating an image from a model by means of computer software. In our case, Cinema 4D. Rendering, the last step in an animation process, gives the final appearance to the models and animation with visual effects such as shadowing, shading, texture mapping, reflections, and motion blurs. So simply put, rendering is the last step of getting your models and animations out of Cinema 4D. So let's just take a look at some of the render settings that we have. So you've got the different renderers you can use, and depending on what version of Cinema you're using, you'll have different options here. We're going to be looking at the standard. You got custom sizes, preset sizes for screen, web, film, video, print landscape. You can type in or dial in your width and height manually if you want. If you have lock ratio here, if you change one of these, the other will change. DPI or resolution, this should always stay at 72 unless you're doing print work. If you want to render only a specific part of your scene, you can do that here in the render region. The film aspect ratio, this is going to reflect the X to Y aspect ratio of the file to be rendered. You have presets over here like HDTV, 16:9, square pixel typically for computers, standard 4:3, which would be standard DVD. Pixel aspect ratio defines the ratio of a pixel's on-screen width to its on-screen height. Frame rate, you could have anything in here from 23.976 to 24 or 30. You could take this up to 60, 120, just depending on if you wanted to do slow motion. Frame range. So let's say that we had a 200 frame animation here, but we only wanted to render out the first 100 frames. We could put the 0 from and 100 in here to do the first 100 frames. If you wanted to output every second or third frame, you could do that here. If you were doing a preview for a client and didn't want to render out the whole thing, use field rendering for smoother playback when working with video. You want to put some notes in, you can put those down here. Go to the save. Now this is where you're actually going to save the actual files that are rendered out of Cinema 4D. So this is going to be the path. The format, you can save them in many different formats. I typically try and save mine as an image sequence, just because if I have a problem and the computer shuts down in the middle of a render and it's been going on for 10 hours, if you're working with something like a QuickTime file, you've got to start all over. If you're working with something like a JPEG sequence or a TIFF or a PNG, then you only have to start back where the computer stops. So if you were at 5,000 on a 10,000 frame animation, you'd only have to start out at 5,000. Naming conventions, how you want the thing output. Image color profile, whether it's going to have an alpha channel in it, you can click this on, whether it's going to be straight or you want to separate the alpha. Included sound, if you have sound in your animation and you want that output, choose that here. If you're going to have multipass rendering, you would turn that on here, and then you'd have a multipass output where you would put in the same information. We're going to go into multipass rendering in a later movie, but that's where you come in and you can make choices separating out the different channels of data. Anti-aliasing, you can set the anti-aliasing level here and the min and max levels. When you do this, when you go up and choose higher levels, you're going to take a big hit on render time though, just to let you know. These are just some different options that you can turn on and off. Stereoscopic, this is if you're going to be outputting 3D. Over here in the effects, you have more options like your ambient occlusion, your global illumination, depth of field. I know you can't see all the way down here, but it goes on and on and on. So this is where you have a lot of your special effects that you can add in. Okay, so that's a quick look at the render settings here in Cinema 4D.